So we will take all of Gaza's territory. We will seize all of the territory. At the same time, we will take from Hamas not only territory and not only kill its terrorists, but we will also take away its ability to steal food from the residents of Gaza. Bringing in our first guest, Gabor Maté is a retired physician and author who, after 20 years of family practice and palliative care experience, worked for over a decade in Vancouver's downtown East Side with patients challenged by drug addiction and mental illness. He's an internationally renowned speaker, highly sought after for his expertise on addiction, trauma, childhood development, and the relationship of stress and illness. His most recent book, which is called The Myth of Normal in Trauma, Illness, and Healing in a Toxic Culture, is a New York Times international bestseller. It's a great pleasure and honor to welcome to the show Dr. Gabor Maté. Doctor, great to meet you.
First of all, drop the doctor, would you? It makes me feel so old. It's Gabor, okay?
Gabor, you got it. All right.
Gabor, yeah. So, thanks for having me, you guys.
Absolutely. It's a great pleasure to meet you. Big admirer of your work. And I really wanted to have you on to talk about the Gaza genocide in terms of the, your area of expertise, trauma and childhood and parenting, both from the perspective of those going through it and those of us who are sort of out here on the periphery looking in. What I wanted to start by showing you was a quick video of Benjamin Netanyahu, which he actually posted, of himself being interviewed by an 8-year-old child. At first, I saw this video posted, and nowadays with AI and things, I couldn't really believe that this was real until I saw it posted from Netanyahu's account himself. I think Israel is very much, a country really born of trauma and a people who has a very unhealthy way of dealing with their trauma. And you speak so much about childhood. So I want to just take a quick look at this video and then get your comment.
לנצח את חמאס. אתה יודע איך נעשה את זה? איך? אני אסביר לך. החמאס, הסיבה שלוקח זמן להביס את החמאס,
because we want to release all our hostages and we are pouring in hostages. So we will take all of Gaza's territory. We will seize all of the territory. At the same time, we will take from Hamas not only territory and not only kill its terrorists, but we will also take away its ability to steal food from the residents of Gaza, who are not Hamas, and we will put all the residents aside so that they will not be harmed. And then we will go after Hamas and also free the hostages. I mean, what do we want to achieve? To release all the hostages, to eliminate Hamas, both militarily and politically, to demilitarize. Do you know what demilitarization is? Do you know what demilitarization is? What is it? Do you know? So I'll tell you. Demilitarization is to take all the weapons that are there, take out the weapons, take out Hamas, exile its leaders, free our hostages. That's the plan. What else? What do you say about the lesson, Mokri? What? You should go. You shouldn't go to the Hamas terrorists, right? You shouldn't go to the terrorists. Where are your people to prevent Hamas from coming in? Okay, so then he goes and he explains the military strategy of enforcing the blockade. Obviously, the trauma inflicted on children in Gaza is unspeakable, both in terms of its severity and the scale. But when I see videos of Israeli children, it makes me think, well, what chance do they have of turning out any different from the Israeli leadership, from the active duty IDF? Can you, first of all, your comments on a video like that where an 8-year-old kid who probably shouldn't even know what war or death even is yet is interviewing the president, or the prime minister rather, about these kinds of topics, the trauma that is sort of embedded within Israeli society as well.
If one wanted to create a vicious parody of Netanyahu, one couldn't have created a better one. it's so polluted, what he says. His manner is so disingenuous. It's so patently inauthentic. His soft voice with which he justifies the mass killing of tens of thousands of people. His political explanations, they're just, there's an expression in Hungarian, my native language, which says that something is so false that not even the opposite is true. And that's all I'm going to say about Netanyahu. In terms of trauma, in 2004, there was a psychiatric report study published in an international psychiatric journal on the trauma level of children in Gaza. In 2004, was 2 years before Hamas took power. In that report, 97.5% of children in Gaza exhibited some symptoms of trauma. Some of them severely, some of them less severely, but only 2.5% showed no symptoms. A significant number wet their beds. They had nightmares. They had anxiety, aggression towards their parents, all kinds of behaviors, fears. And that was 2004. So those kids would have been 19 years later in their early 20s. Guess who streamed into Israel on October the 7th, 2023? Many of those kids grown up, who grew up with no chance in life whatsoever, no opportunity to leave the Gaza Strip, living under a vicious, brutal blockade. I mean, I don't have to rehearse or go through all the history. And if you look at Hamas, again, if anybody thinks that history began on October the 7th, they should read that psychiatric study from 2004. If you look at the leaders of Hamas themselves, Chris Hedges, who I know you know, he spoke to one of the founders of Hamas, a physician, who watched his uncle being murdered in 1956 by the Israeli army in Gaza. And he said, they planted hate in my heart. And so for Netanyahu to begin with this evil monster Hamas, without acknowledging that Israel created Hamas, both in the sense of creating the refugee problem in Gaza, who are 80% of Gazans were people who were exiled from Israel in the first place, or their descendants. And secondly, in traumatizing the Gazan population over and over and over again for decades. And then to talk about these monsters in Hamas. Well, who created the monster if they're monsters? Who created them? I'm not going to get into a political analysis of Hamas. I'm just saying that nobody should begin to think that history started on October the 7th. I recently wrote the foreword for a book by the head psychiatrist for the Palestinian territories, Dr. Salma Jabbar. It's called Resilience. And she's talking about the mental state of the population living under the constant stress and trauma of occupation. Not just Gaza, but the West Bank as well. And she says, for example, when an 81-year-old comes to me with suicidal depression because the home that he built with his own hands now is being forced to demolish with his own hands, what am I supposed to do with him? Treat him with Prozac for depression, she says. So the trauma in the Palestinian territories is just ongoing and is beyond words. As far as the trauma that was one of the, not the only one, but one of the founding streams that flowed into creating Zionism, sure, nobody in their right minds denies the Jewish trauma in Eastern Europe. But that doesn't explain Israeli policy. I mean, you could be traumatized in Eastern Europe and still come to the Middle East and looking for refuge without seeking to dominate, oppress, and suppress the local population, unless you're intent on domination yourself, unless you have a colonial objective.
Mm.
And so that emotionally, the Jewish trauma fed the Zionist dynamic, but it doesn't explain it, not by itself. And so one cannot say that one trauma balances or teeter-totters the other. That's my quick response. No,
yeah,
sorry.
no,
Right.
think of it. No, it seems like the Jewish trauma has sort of morphed. You know, I'm a Jewish guy myself. I have Sicilian in-laws, and my mother-in-law was talking to me about Israel Gaza, and she tells me, you know, she's a Catholic Italian, right? She says, you know, I'm surprised that the Jewish people would be so cruel in this way, given their history. You know, she tells to me, she says, given their history, given what was done to them, I'm kind of surprised they would be so cruel to these people. It's surprising to her in that way. Does that signal there's been a sort of morphing of trauma, you know, or what? How would we explain that?
Well, so first of all, I'm not surprised, unless one puts Jews into a different category than other human beings. What I say is that Jews have as much right to be mass murderers as everybody else, you know,
Right.
and, if you want to put it that way.
I should have told her that, damn it.
Yeah. Trauma doesn't automatically ennoble you or purifies you or make you more humane, more open-hearted. It can have all kinds of effects, and all kinds of traumatized people become really cruel and aggressors. So that trauma has multiple possible outcomes. One of them is that you take on the characteristics of the traumatizer so that you can be strong and never be a victim again.
Right.
And that's largely what's going on the emotional level, you know, and in terms of what you said about the education of young Israeli kids and young Jewish kids in general, is that they are propagandized from an early age on into this victim mode. We're always the victims. Everybody's always against us. We have to be the biggest MFs on the block, you know, to protect ourselves. And that if you talk to Israeli war resistors, people that refuse to serve in the army, or people who are genuinely in favor of peace, which is a vanishingly small percentage of the Israeli population right now, they'll tell you the propaganda system in which they were caught up from a very early age on. And they'll tell you how difficult it was to break away from that. And if you saw the film Israelism, which is about young American Jews deprogramming themselves from their childhood enmeshment in the Zionist ideology, it's the same difficulty. And so that, you can traumatize people by inculcating certain beliefs in them. And if you tell people that you're always the victim and everybody's always against you and everybody will always be against you, well, what kind of consciousness do you grow up with? And then naturally you'll gravitate towards the strong people that'll protect you, and the strong army and the strong weapons, and you will not for a minute even allow yourself to recognize the brutality that you're perpetrating. 80% of Israelis right now are in favor of expelling all the Gazans from Gaza. 82% amongst 90% amongst the religious Israelis, only 70% amongst the secular Israelis, and close to 50% of Israelis in a recent poll are in favor of expelling all the Palestinians from all of Israel. Close to 50%.
Mm.
Yeah.
Imagine if you did a poll in the United States, and those kind of numbers were in favor of expelling all indigenous people and all colored people.
Mm-hmm.
What that would mean about American society. Not that you're not heading that way, but
yeah.
But I mean, that's what we're looking at. And, and then the other thing is, with few exceptions aside, this show being one of them, where do people even hear this news about the Israeli poll? You think it'd be front page in the New York Times?
Right.
They didn't even mention it.
Lindsey Graham called for the murder of Greta Thunberg. He said, "I sure hope she can swim." I mean, you got a senator egging on literally the murder of a young activist woman. It's unbelievable.
Come see us live. Glasgow, Manchester, Belfast, Dublin, London, Liverpool, Birmingham. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.